By the end of today's episode, you will understand why the panic of being done actually pulls you back to your ex, and how to regulate your nervous system through the grief and the fear and the loneliness so that you can break the trauma bond. Hello, and welcome back to the episode. If you have just left a relationship that you know was not good for you, and the panic of actually being done feels more unbearable than the relationship itself, and you keep getting close to not reaching out to him, and then the fear of being alone forever and the grief of things actually ending, and this thought of, well, was it all a waste, actually pulls you back in, this episode is for you. After listening today, you are going to understand why going back feels almost like a relapse that you lost control of. You're going to understand the real reason that you can't just white-knuckle your way through this withdrawal or this separation period from your now ex. And you're going to understand this really key nervous system piece that will allow you to keep your distance and be with these uncomfortable feelings without feeling like you have to go back to the relationship in order to feel okay. And be sure to stick around to the end of the episode where I always pull an oracle card. This will offer you a message that you can just sit with this week as you continue to move forward in your healing. Okay, so let's take a deep breath and begin. One of the questions that I get asked most often in my practice is, Bre, why do I keep going back to somebody that I know is not good for me? They are asking this question usually with having done extensive journaling around the laundry list of reasons that this person is not good, right? They see all of the ways that they lied. They see all of the times that the promise cycle was broken, right? Where he's like, I'm going to change, I'm going to do this, and yet it doesn't happen again. They see the manipulation. They see the gaslighting. They see how harmful this relationship is to their mental health. They're seeing it in their physical health. Oftentimes, women are like starting to lose hair or lose weight or have really weird effects coming up in their physical body, and they know it's somehow related to the incredible amount of stress that they've been living in with this person. So they know I shouldn't be with him. He's not good for me. This hurts. Yet, when they finally hit that fuck this shift, is what I call it, where you finally break up with the person and you're like, I can't fucking do this anymore. I have to focus on me. We need some space. When they finally hit that fuck this shift, then they have the separation and 2 or 3 weeks go by, and then the relief of like not having to walk on eggshells every time they come into their house or not having to check in with somebody 55 times a day, when that relief goes away, then this like low-level panic starts simmering in their bellies. And what turns the heat up on that panic is now they're having another Friday night and Saturday and Sunday all by themselves. And they're starting to feel the real reality of living alone. And that's kicking up some of their fear of being alone forever. And then what turns it up another notch is starting to go down memory lane around all of the nostalgic, amazing times that they've had together. Of, gosh, when it's good, we are really connected. We really jive. Things really flow. We have so many good moments. I don't want to throw all of that away. And then what kicks it up another notch is, gosh, maybe I need to try again. Maybe I wasn't trying enough in the relationship. And if I go back, then things, and I'm trying differently, then things are going to be different. And then this won't all be for nothing. I've already invested 1, 2, 5, 15 years into this person. I don't want that all to be for nothing. And so as these different feelings keep notching up the panic, they get to this place where they're so uncomfortable, they feel dysregulated, they're confused as why it hurts so bad without the person when they left to get away from the pain, right? They have confusion happening again. They're feeling panic. They're feeling all of these withdrawal symptoms, and they don't know what to do other than reach out to their ex. And so they do. They reunite the relationship. And this comes with the best of intentions from the woman that I'm talking to, of like, okay, I know all these things, but now I'm actually going to change the way that I'm showing up. So maybe our dynamic's going to be different. And gosh, just being with him again, having someone in the house, it feels so good right now. Like I just needed this. Then some time goes by and you start to find yourself again in that same exact cycle where things start feeling weird. He starts lying again. You start having to walk on eggshells. You start not being able to communicate as well. And then that embarrassment comes back up, right? Of like, fuck, I did this again. There was a woman that I was talking to recently who said this so beautifully that it really just resonated in my body. She was in this exact place. And what she said was, I can hold out from reaching out to him until I'm blue in the face. And then I have to do it. So it's almost like it just summarizes this feeling so well of holding your breath. I can only hold my breath for so long until I have to take the breath. I have to reach out to him to get the answer or the validation or the restarting of the relationship. I need that in order to be able to breathe again. And that just felt so visceral because I know what that feeling's like. I know that hard place of, gosh, I really don't want to reach out. I know that this is not right, but I can't stop myself from doing it. And to go back into what's in part fueling that panic, what's notching up the heat on that panic is this fear, right? There's fear here when you are separated from the person. It's triggering your stuff around being alone, around being lovable or not. There's thoughts coming up of, oh God, will I be alone forever if this doesn't work with this person, right? He feels like the only solution. There's other fears there of, like, if it actually ends, then I have to acknowledge how bad it was. And I have to acknowledge, oh my God, okay, so it was so bad. It was this bad that it ended, and it was this bad for this long, and I stayed. And I don't know about you, but when I was in that place, the thought that came up was, well, what's wrong with me? Shit. Like, if I acknowledge that this is really as bad as it is, and bad enough to never go back, bad enough to never talk to this person again, in my case, then I have to actually look at what was allowing me to stay in this relationship. I'll tell you a story about, gosh, when I was in my early days of the post-separation abuse that I endured with my narcissistic ex, it was really scary. And there was a lot of things that he was doing that fell into the category of stalking and harassment that led me to file a restraining order. And so I had called the cops. The cops were at my house. They were talking to me about the incident that had just happened. And they were like, well, to file a restraining order, like you have to write down some documentation around what's been happening in the last week. And I was like, okay. So they give me the form to fill out. They leave. And I'm sitting down on my living room floor at my coffee table, like with all of these different things, with the video footage, with the emails, with the different phone numbers, with just all this shit that was happening. And I get to the bottom of the form, and the box to put, all of the line items in of what had been happening was not very big. And so it said that you could attach another piece of paper. And I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing. And I finally have the original form and like 3 pages of additional information of things that had happened in the last week. And to see it written down, this inventory of like shit that had been happening in just the last week was overwhelming. It was too much for me to acknowledge that was real almost. Like I felt myself try to dissociate out of what that actually meant. Because if that was just the last week, what the fuck was happening for the last 4 years? And that was a lot to sit with. It was a lot to go back and think about all of the things that had happened over the time that we had been together that I had justified away or turned my head away from or, stuck my head in the sand. It was a lot to take in as reality. And so if you're feeling fear around that, like, I fucking get it, because there's a lot of questions that come up about who you are as a woman, why you did the things that you did. Was it even real, right? There's layers of grief that are laced into that acknowledgement of how bad it was and that it was so bad that it needed to end. And so that fear, that part of you that's afraid of feeling the layers of the grief and feeling these confronting questions, like, yeah, of course that part of you is really afraid because it is painful to look at that. It is painful to acknowledge the relationship and your part and how this all unfolded and who you were and who you thought he was and the layers of the grief of it all. But what's happening right now, when you're feeling that fear and you're feeling this panic, what's happening inside your brain in some adaptive place is like, hey, he's familiar. And we know that if we go to him, that there's at least a period of time that feels relieving from all of these feelings that we don't want to feel. And so if I go back, then A, maybe there's still hope and I don't have to really close the door on this thing. And B, I don't have to really confront all these questions of why do I feel afraid of being alone forever? And I don't have to accept that it's actually over. So there's a part of you that's like, oh, hey, we can just restart this relationship with this person. And then we don't have to deal with this separation and everything that stirs up. But you've done this, and I say this with so much love, but that part of you doesn't have the sustainable solution. Because what you experience when you go back is that short-term comfort. There, of course, is a period of time that's all like lovey-dovey and love-bomby again. And oh my gosh, things are going to be different. And we have so much hope. And it's really an intense high after the intense low, which is part of this biochemical cycle that you've been stuck in with him of needing that high. But when that cycle repeats, when things start shifting, you end up in more pain because the going back to him didn't actually solve the deeper problem, right? It's just like an alcoholic who, let's say, has 2 weeks sober. They haven't taken a drink in 2 weeks. And then they start to feel this overwhelming nag of emotions that they don't know how to be with. And the only way that they know how to find relief is to take a drink. And so what do? They take a drink and several drinks, but what happens the next day? They wake up hungover with the same pain, the same emotional pain, the same trauma, the same pull then to reach for another drink to dampen that and to shut up the embarrassment that now is present for having failed, quote unquote, at being sober in the first place. So it's really a compounding cycle. And I get so angry when people in the space are talking about trauma bonds or the narcissistic cycle and aren't addressing this withdrawal period because there is a dependency here. You have been in the pattern of going to the person who caused you the pain for the relief. And that is by design. You're going through these intense highs and these intense lows, which is releasing dopamine and oxytocin, which is taking away your pain and telling your brain, this thing takes away my pain, keep seeking that thing. And you have gone through this cycle so many times that this is now a biochemical connection or bond that you have with this person, which is why when you're trying to release that, just like a dependency on alcohol, you can't just white-knuckle that. You can't just think your way through something that your body is literally clocking as unsafe. Like, we are unsafe without the relief from this person. We must get the relief from this person, which is why the panic and the overwhelm and the fear feel like physical pain. And you can't just white knuckle your way through that. You just can't, because your nervous system is smarter than your brain. And if it's unsafe, it's going to direct you to the place where you can find safety the quickest. That is how we are evolutionarily wired. And I really want you to understand this, because if you're not treating this with the importance of needing the support like a person would need support if they were coming off of another addiction, then you're going to try to keep doing this by yourself. You're going to keep telling yourself, oh, I'll be stronger next time. or I'm going to learn more about the narcissistic cycle or the trauma bond, and that will help me from not going back. And more time is going to go by, and more cycles are going to roll through. You're going to go back to him more times. You're going to feel more embarrassed. And specifically, if you're in the age right now of really wanting to start a family, or if you have kids and you know that this dynamic is affecting them, continuing to go through this cycle is going to continue to take away time from you either starting a family or really showing your kids what a healthy dynamic is supposed to look like. And the more times that you go through the cycle, the more trauma there is for you. Because inevitably, there's going to be more lying, there's going to be more gaslighting, there's going to be more of him not showing up and breaking his promises, there's going to be more emotional abuse, physical abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, whatever type of abuse you're experiencing from this person, there's more time in that cycle, which means more of those situations, which means more that you are being impacted by. So I know that it's tempting and your body is pulling you towards safety, right? And that it's clocking from him in order to feel the relief. But just like the alcoholic who takes a drink without acknowledging the deeper emotional wound that he or she is trying to soothe with that drink, that same wound is going to be there the next time. So for you, being able to really address the panic and the fears and the loneliness and these emotions that are making you feel unsafe and dysregulated, you addressing them and not just suppressing them until the next time the cycle brings you back to a head is going to be the way that you are going to discharge that seeking of safety from somebody else, because you will have the tool to be able to find regulation and safety for yourself. Going back doesn't give you that tool. Going back gives you the momentary drink. It gives you the momentary feeling of drunk, of I don't have to think about this, but that pain is still there. So what I want is to really give you the tool that's going to help you withstand that withdrawal period, that's going to help you feel the loneliness and not spiral into I'll be alone forever and therefore reach out to him. To help you be alone on a Saturday night and not slump into the couch and scroll on his socials and then reach out to him. I want you to feel resourced and strong enough to move through the grief of the relationship ending and your dreams going away, and for you to have the ability to look back on that relationship with wisdom and compassion, to see what went wrong instead of fear and judgment. Which is why what I do with women inside my Becoming program is give you the nervous system regulation tools and techniques that are foundational for you to be able to be with this discomfort, to trust yourself and your decisions, and to feel like yourself again. Because again, if you are taking away the thing that gives you relief and you're not replacing it with another way to find relief, you're going to keep going back to the same thing you know. Of course you are. Because your body wants to keep you safe. And the threat of the feelings becomes bigger than the threat of the person. That is just how the trauma bond works. So this nervous system work that is missing is going to be what ensures that you are not consumed within the panic of being alone, and therefore reaching out to the person that you know is not good for you, but that you know can take away a little bit of the pain, so that you aren't spending most of your precious life sucked back into the same fucking cycle. If you have been trying to white-knuckle, if you have been trying to just learn more about narcissistic relationships and trauma bonds, and it doesn't feel like it's working, it's because you're missing this nervous system piece. I don't want you to get sucked in again. I don't want you to go back for the temporary fix. I don't want you to feel any more moments of feeling consumed and helpless in these emotions that you're having. And I know it's July, but the holidays are not that far away. And the holidays are going to kick up more of all of this, as they tend to do when we are in the spirit of the holidays and around family and such. And so now is a really, really good time to get a head start on rebuilding your strength, rebuilding your resources, getting some new tools, being able to unpack what happened so that you aren't tempted, especially during this most magical time of the year that is coming soon. You aren't tempted to go back. So if you want to explore what the Becoming program looks like, you can go to the show notes. You can schedule an intro session with me. We will spend an hour together talking about what is happening and how the program can help. If you have been trying all the things and you are not getting anywhere and you find yourself still in the cycle, I invite you to try something different. That link is in the show notes to schedule your intro session. And finally, let's pull an oracle card here and see what is the message for you today. Amoeba. Amoeba says, Amoeba, the simple survivor, has everything she needs. This visitor in her simplicity brings a message of independence, individuality, and longevity. Since the beginning of time, she has existed, undefined by shape, able to stretch and flow in her own way. Amoeba brings a message of autonomy and freedom. You won't be trapped or boxed in. You have skillfully maneuvered out of confining, rigid situations before, and this time is no different. Trust your history and natural ability to shapeshift. Amoeba reminds you of the flexibility of your very nature. Slippery at times and able to move fluidly through any situation, you have all you need. Enjoy the self-sufficiency you embody. If perhaps you have forgotten your autonomy and stick like a parasite to things that don't serve you, Amoeba is a reminder to be flexible, creative, and let go. Being too strict goes against your natural essence. Free yourself and simplify. Love that. So please schedule that intro session, and until I see you there or I see you in the next episode, please remember that you are not alone.